Good morning, everyone. I think it's a good idea for us to get started. We have a very packed agenda the entire day, so we do want to make sure that we can keep on track. So I'd like to take a few moments to introduce our moderator today, Surbhi Kaul. Surbhi has immense technology and strategy experience both in B2B and B2C, and has worked in various leadership roles at Google, Netflix, Cisco, to name a few. And she has launched many successful products across her entire experience in the industry. Most recently, she led query disambiguation and speech recognition efforts on leading-edge Google Home and Google Assistant-enabled devices using Google Cloud machine learning methods. Surbhi holds a bachelor's degree from IIT Kanpur and a master's degree in computer science from Texas A&M. She's very passionate about supporting the IIT community. She's a member of the board of the IIT Bay Area, organization that is bringing this conference to you here today, and is the marketing chair for the conference too. She's a key leader in the IIT AI/ML forum and is the former president of the IIT Kanpur West chapter. She's also the chair and leader of the Women in Product San Francisco Bay Area organization. Another interesting factoid of Surbhi is that she is an amazing singer, so if you haven't heard her sing, you should talk to her later. And of course, as you have seen, she's the MC for the event, and she's been an MC for an event for this event for many years now. So please welcome the IIT rockstar and my good friend, Surbhi Kaul.
Thank you, Meenakshi. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Such an amazing intro you gave. I appreciate that. Little bit far-flighted, but I wish I had the time to give those kind of introductions for each of the panelists today who are here to talk to us about fake news, the challenges, some of the impactful work each of them is doing. But since we have about 30 minutes and I want to make sure I give them all an opportunity to speak, I will let them make their own intro as they answer the first question. So just to set the stage for what we are going to discuss today is that we all grew up in a different world. Hopefully, like everybody, I'm assuming, is in our age group, where we really respected journalism. We consumed our news from news channels, from amazing newspapers. But these days, things have slightly shifted with the advent of social media and the amount of information we get. The news consumption has started happening over tweets, over social media, Facebook, YouTube, and other sites. And a lot of it, when I talk about abuse, is these websites that are deliberately seeking to be perceived as legitimate for some financial or political gain. So let's get started and try and understand what are the challenges that we see in this kind of environment where social media has now become the purveyor of news. So we'll start with you, Ashish, and as I said, give a little bit of intro, what you do and how this is related to what we're talking about and what are the challenges you see in this space.
Absolutely, thank you, Surbhi. My name is Ashish Bansal. I am IIT BHU 99 graduate, work at Twitter. And a little known fact is I was an internationally rated chess player. Now, one of those facts is fake. So, I thought it's good for you to figure out, but the point I was trying to make is none of those facts, and one of them is definitely fake, which is that I'd never played chess, but you would have probably believed me just because of my background and how I presented myself. Being an IITian, it's not very hard to say that I would probably be good at chess, and that's probably one of the challenges with fake news is fake news that's close or builds upon facts is really, really hard to detect. If you think about it this way, I got this message from WhatsApp yesterday which says Jinnah's grandson is a member of RSS and recites shlokas. So this is a message that I got, and how do you know if this is fake or not? It turns out that the very famous businessman Nusli Wadia is Jinnah's grandson. I did not know this fact till yesterday. It turns out that because he's a businessman and spends a fair amount of time in Mumbai, he associates with the upper echelons of Mumbai society. Some of the top RSS leaders are also in the same group, and like any businessman, his interest is in making sure that nobody interrupts his business activities, so he meets with everybody. Now, because this news that was there is so close to the truth, so he has met a number of RSS people, he has spent time with them. He is Jinnah's grandson. The only extrapolation is he recites shlokas and is member of RSS. So that makes it detection of fake news really, really bad. Where the challenge is when you weaponize it to get a viewpoint. I think that's I think a main issue with fake news, because you have to distinguish between belief. I believe that the earth is flat, but that belief is more or less harmless, unless I'm trying to build a ballistic missile. But like by and large, it's harmless. I might have also a belief that vaccines are not good for kids, in which case I can actually hurt populations, as is evidenced by measles outbreak in the United States. And so you have to decide what is belief and it's okay for people to express versus what is going to harm society in general. And maybe that distinction needs to be made, because you still have to account and allow freedom of speech. The benefit of social media is that it has given voice to the downtrodden and to the marginalized. But some of the marginalized might also be the neo-Nazi groups or the racist groups, right? But they're also marginalized for a different reason.
Yeah.
Society and history judges people differently over time. So we have to, I think one of the challenges we face is, where do we draw the line on, and who draws the line, who has the power to draw the line. Singapore just passed a law that says any fake news has to be reported, and the Singaporean government will decide whether it's fake news or not. That might be a well-intentioned law. In some other country and under the hands of some other leader, it might be a way to enforce censorship or even propaganda. So these are just some of the challenges in this space.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ashish. Vijay, I'll go next to you. What do you, please introduce yourself and then share with the audience what are your thoughts on some of the challenges in this space.
Sure. I'm a founder and CTO of Turing. What we do is we source software engineers from all over the world, put them through a series of programming tests and take-home projects, and people that pass that in turn are interviewed, and we then match them with companies that are finding it hard to compete with Google and Facebook for local talent, but are okay with trying remote engineers that match your time zone insofar as they are exceptional. So that's what we do at Turing. The reason I'm on this panel is because of my last AI startup that got acquired a couple of years back. That was called Rover, and we were a content recommendation engine. So we would, based on your past content consumption data, we would figure out what your interests are and what other content that you may like. So in many ways, a lot of the things we handled were problems similar to what any, much smaller scale of course, but similar problems to what Facebook and Twitter handle. Now with regard to the problem of fake news itself, I think the first point I'd like to make is that that makes nailing it difficult is the fact that the problem itself is so ill-defined. For example, let's take the world of economics, where you're trying to narrate something. You're trying to report on what is the reason for a financial crisis, or what is good government policy, what has scientific evidence behind it, and so on. Now, 50% of even the economics Nobel laureates disagree with each other. If you believe in Edward Prescott, Paul Krugman doesn't know what he's talking about. If you believe Paul Krugman, Edward Prescott doesn't know anything. In fact, the most famous thing was, I think, in the 70s when Friedrich Hayek and this other Swedish economist won the Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel Prize in Economics. Hayek was a complete free market economist, a complete laissez-faire. This guy was basically a socialist/communist. Both cannot be right at the same time, but if that is what you have at something like the Nobel laureate level, how can you possibly ever, how can a system ever possibly get down to the assessing the truth? So that is the first thing I would point out. Second thing I would point out is often detecting fake news is not consistent with real business objectives. Ultimately, any platform has to maximize for user engagement, give users what they want. Is it really the case that people want information that doesn't reinforce their worldview? It's not at all clear. Maybe a small percentage of people might, but a lot of experiments show that that's not so. In fact, I would even say that today's fake news thing has some precursors in dates back at least to 2010, 2011, when people talked about the filter bubble and the fact that social networks just reinforce your own worldview as opposed to helping you get a broader perspective. So I think this is indeed a challenge. Are you willing to hurt your daily active users, your monthly active users, your retention and all that in return for doing this? The third one I would point out is, again, this touches a little bit on what he said, which is that I don't know how many of you, for example, are that some of the methods are fundamentally just challenging to detect this without doing more damage in the process. So how many of you have read Krishna Bharat's blog post article he wrote almost like 2 years back on detecting fake news? So basically, Krishna Bharat was like the creator of Google News, and I think he was no longer with Google at that time, and he had some ideas for how one might go about detecting it. But the point is, fundamentally, this still relied on authority. It basically said something to the effect that if a tail news source talks about something and none of the major media talk about it, downweight it. But this again conflicts with democratization of information, so it means you're privileging just major media. So these are all problems.
So we will come back to more talking about solutions and how we can fight this fake news challenge. I want to turn it over to Vikas, and Vikas, if you can share a little bit about yourself and then talk about from your point of view, what are some of the challenges you're perceiving in this space?
Sure, thanks, Ruby. So I'm Vikas Jha, founder CEO of a conversational AI startup called Radiance Labs. Before that, I spent about 10 years in the ad tech world, where everything was about optimizing for clicks. So somewhat tangentially related to how fake news spreads. So I would say, point out two things, thinking about the problems and challenges. The first one is the conflation of facts, news, and opinions. Oftentimes the same term, fake news, is used to describe both how factually incorrect stories spread, as well as how potentially questionable ideologies and opinions spread. And sometimes opinions and facts are mixed together, sprinkled together. That makes it even more complicated. But the two are fundamentally different issues, different problems. Two being spreading factually, provably wrong information and spreading ideas, opinions, other content that may be somebody's personal opinion. The real problem is even if we, people who are in the tech world, we can differentiate between these two problems. In fact, the spreading of ideas and opinions maybe should not be slowed down. Maybe it's not even a problem. Spreading of factually incorrect stuff should be stopped, and that is a problem. But in the eyes of the common man, they're basically one and the same problem, because they both spread on social media, they both spread in the same way. So that, I think, is fundamentally an issue, how we educate the common man to understand, and common person, to understand the difference between the two. The second issue is the incentive issues. The companies, the big platforms, are optimized to emphasize user experience, optimize user experience. Google, Facebook, everybody. How does controlling the spread of fake, factually wrong information, or for that matter, opinion, how does it intersect with user experience? I'll contrast it with email spam. Email spam has a perfect alignment between stopping spam and improving user experience, and that's why companies have been able to solve it quite well. When it comes to spreading fake news, sometimes it runs counter to user experience. For the collective good, it may be good to reduce the amount of fake information in the system for collective good, but a specific individual may actually want to hear sensational news, unsavory news, potentially borderline factually incorrect news. So how do companies balance the goal of improving user experience, but at the same time reducing the content, the fake content in the system? I think that's a challenge.
Thank you very much, Vikas, appreciate that. I'm going to turn the topic discussion now and start delving in some of the solutions, some of the things that we can do to fight this fake news. Like you both, I think, Vikas, Vijay, both of you talked about how companies might be incentivized to attract users and engage with them by giving them things that they would be interested in. However, it's also a responsibility to see how we can ensure some kind of verity to that information. So, Prakhar, I would like you to introduce yourself and share some of the things that you feel can be done in this field.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Prakhar. I'm not actually from IIT. I went to IIT Trichy, but I did my bachelor's thesis at IIT Kanpur. So I spent the 4th year at Kanpur because of aerospace lab present there. I did my PhD from Caltech in aeronautics. I'm a machine learning scientist at Walmart. I lead the AI efforts for Walmart. On the store side, Walmart is putting massive investments in AI, primarily to disrupt its core operations. When I look at, prior to Walmart, I was at Uber in doing machine learning, and then at Twitter, that's where I started my career. When you come to fake news, I'll take more academic route from a scientific understanding where we are. So as Ashish and other panelists have pointed out, if you think of fake news, right? I mean, purely from I'm a data scientist, right? So when a problem is presented to me, say to identify fake news, you immediately encounter two problems, right? First is, do I have a historical data set, right, where I can even learn from it, right? So that's that's an open problem. There's only just one data set probably right now that is open sourced called Liar, which anybody can use it to train on. The second is the algorithms themselves, right? I mean, you can throw LSTMs or some form of deep learning network, but it's pretty much about it where we are from the academic, from science point of view. There is no scientific consensus. If you go to conferences like ACL or ICML, there is no scientific consensus on what is the definition of fake news, right? What is fake, right? But what is consensus? What people have come to an agreement is all scientists come to an agreement is that, look, fake news or false news spreads way more faster than truth. As per our conventional wisdom, that bots are the reason that fake news goes viral. It's actually humans that makes fake news viral. So that was a major finding at ACL last year, where a conventional wisdom is that, look, bots are the reason. So if I'm a platform, I should deactivate bots account and fake news spread will stop. But nothing like that happened, right? It's a humans, and so then whole psychological scientists get involved and neuroscientists got involved as to wait, humans are propagating this, right? So what is going on? And it turns out, and so then people from information theory got involved and look, you know what, fake news has this inherent structure of novelty in it. It's novel, and we human beings like novel things. And the moment something novel comes to our mind, that's how in our genetic and our DNA, we would like to share it. Doesn't matter, it's a novel information. Novel information can be both right or wrong. So you have this structure of the problem that the scientist community has not agreed upon. So how should I even frame the problem? That's where we are in today from academic understanding. And so to answer your question, solution, what can a platform do, right? Well, you know what, I can go write the world's best algorithm out there, but then I need to incentive, because it's humans who are propagating this, we need to have incentives, products, like a startup is waiting to be formed and then to be acquired by one of these giants, where, you know what, I can have a Chrome extension where with just this down the probability of this article being fake or not, right? And then leave it up to the user. Otherwise, you're going to hurt the bottom line. Like Twitter or Facebook is not going to invest in this, because like you can't. If it is bots, I understand, but if it is humans who are propagating this, it goes against the monthly active users number that we report on Wall Street. So it's not going to work. So that's from a scientific point of view.
Thank you, Prakhar. Yeah, that completely makes sense. And the fact that it's an ill-defined problem, how do you even go around solving that? So you mentioned Twitter and Facebook, and I think I would love to turn it over to Ashish, because you face these challenges, and what are some of the, of course, publicly known things that you can talk about of, what are the challenges, and, or what are you doing to solve this ill-defined space?
Yeah. I think just one thing is, I think Vikas has mentioned this, Prakhar has also mentioned, I think Vijay also mentioned this, is about metrics. And I feel that if you are looking to build a company that wants to live around for the long term, trust from the consumer standpoint is very important. And trust from a consumer standpoint is not something that you should measure on a MAU by quarter level. It is something that goes over a period of months and years, actually. I happen to lead a product inside Twitter that is used in over 80 countries. And we have seen some of the improvements that we have made there. We have seen gains show us that people have come back and used that product more and more in the past 8 months. So it has taken us 8 months to get that usage gains there. So there is a change in leadership thinking around changing from short term, do I need to hit the numbers this quarter, versus because there's a lot of things you can do to hit the numbers in every quarter, which you should still do, right? Like you're still a commercial business. But you should also try to think of what are the, how do you measure trust? And one of the metrics we use is CSATs. And one of the CSAT questions is, do you trust the information on the platform, and see if that goes up. Otherwise, there's a couple of different things. From an NLP, NLU standpoint, it's very hard to detect fake news. One thing that we have discovered, which Prakhar hinted at, is this concept of rings. So rings are groups of people who forward a lot. I'm pretty sure all of you have these group of relatives that are incessant about sending you WhatsApp forwards. Yeah. And it's the same message that you probably get from similar relatives or friends in groups. So you can think of them as a ring for you. And I'm pretty sure you know who those people are. And I'm pretty sure when you open WhatsApp, you have a discounted function in your brain that looks at, okay, who sent this message? And then you have an information quality measure that's already built in your head. Now, this can be mathematically used as a function to optimize. Yeah. So that's one area that we are doing a lot of work in, is looking at rings, not content, because content is very hard to do.
Yeah, it's human behavior.
Yeah,
it's not bots.
Behavior. Right.
Right. I can't deactivate my mom's account. Yeah. My dad. You cannot. I just cannot. Like, yeah, I cannot. You can deactivate you can silence the WhatsApp group. That's best you can do. Yes. But how do you do it at scale?
Yeah. So a lot of graph algorithms help us a lot in looking at the users as opposed to the content. And that saves you from being problematic NLP, NLU techniques. On the NLP, NLU side, my sense is that we have high recall techniques, but not high precision techniques. Yeah. And that results in building a human-in-the-loop AI system. If you change the objective of the AI, like the machine learning model, from precision to recall, and only giving a ranked list that a human will evaluate, life becomes much more easier. Because the human then, instead of looking at a billion pieces of news, is only looking at some potentially high recall but lower precision items. And then you can keep continually training on those. That, I think, is a very crisp solution, which I think companies like Jigsaw, etc., are doing. And then lastly, I would like to say that user feedback is not a great way. I manage a lot of user feedback, and one of the highest user feedback per impression, like you have to normalize it by impression, thing that we got last year was Halloween. A lot of people thought that that trend was abusive. Now, I'm pretty sure most people in this room would not qualify Halloween as an abusive trend. This happens with sports games. I don't like the other team, I will report them trending as abusive. Again, goes back to human behavior. So my request to humans in the room, hopefully there are no bots here, is that be a little judicious before you send that next forward. Same thing as spam. If you get Jinnah's grandson is an RSS member, like a simple Wikipedia search would actually give you the answer, and that will probably go a very long way as well.
Thank you, Ashish. So we have a few minutes left. I would love to ask Vikas you and then Vijay you, what are your thoughts on some of the implementations and improvements that we can make for this? And if we can take a minute and a half each, that'll be awesome.
Okay, so I'll mention two things. So one is, on the solution side, maybe I'm in a minority camp here, but I'm actually optimistic about the solutions of the actual factually correct fake news problem. I feel like 2016 happened, it took everybody by surprise. Nobody appreciated the scale of the problem. The big companies, Facebook, Google, Twitter, they're all now focused on solving that part of the problem, and there's lots of techniques to do it. I think it will get solved. The other thing to keep in mind is 60% of the people still get their news from broadcast sources, TV and news. So yes, social media is all around us, and sometimes hard to appreciate the fact that majority of the country in the US still get their news from broadcast media. So overall, I am optimistic about that part of the problem. Where I feel like not enough attention is being given is what is happening to our journalism, the standards of journalism. Ultimately, platforms like Google and Twitter and Facebook, they host content, they host news, and they disseminate news, but they don't create news. The news is created by institutions and people, and what has happened is internet has killed quality journalism, right? It is sort of emphasized the long tail or the democratization of content and news, and that has resulted. So how do we use technology to rebuild those institutions the journalistic institutions and individuals. You know, back in the day, institutions and people invested decades in building reputation, journalistic reputation, so there was a disincentive, and they would fact check everything, and they didn't want to put out the wrong story, and now that has gone away. So how we use technology to rebuild those institutions, that's where I think part of the solution lies.
Yeah, thank you, Vikas. And Vijay, if you want to talk about some deep learning AI methodologies here.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm most optimistic about methods that attempt to surface given a piece of news, surface the piece of content that most strongly makes the strongest argument supporting it, and this thing, and the strongest argument that opposes it, in both in letter as well as spirit. For example, suppose there's fake news can come in many different types, right? There can be something said, I mean, there can be errors of commission, which is making a false statement. There can be errors of omission also, like leaving out something crucial. Now, I think modern deep learning methods applied to NLP, as well as all the other sorts of side user generated data, can help us get to this thing, the best supporting and the best opposing argument. I think I'm not at all bullish on the possibility of algorithms that can find the truth for us.
Thank you very much, Vijay. We will take a couple of questions. We are almost out of time, but if anybody has a question, we can get that answered now. Otherwise, I would request the panelists also to stay around for people to come up to them and ask them additional questions that they might have. So any burning questions? All right, so.
I think there was one question.
If you don't mind coming up to the microphone and talking, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
In terms of entrepreneurship, do you guys have some advice on how news about your company you may want to encourage, how you want to spread it, and then look out for certain things? Because many things you said about helps in general daily living, but let's say you want to start a company, medium, large, so all this information is your reputation. Reputation helps with your customers and your revenue. So is there something, some insights from here that can help spread news about your cause in a particular way?
There is a couple of different ways. If you think about going through a lot of these news sources, the good thing about news is most of it is public, right? Because you can look at whether it's, even if you don't like Breitbart, but it is still a public website and you can still get everything that's on it there. Most of the stuff on Twitter, I think, is pretty much public. So you can get a lot of information out there. The question is, what do you want to construct? So there are companies like AirPR who are trying to evaluate how much PR dollars are actually working out for you. You have companies like Data Miner who do alerts for journalists, so that journalists, like, it's almost like the old school journalists used to watch this police scanner, right? Like if there is a report, then they would like rush to that spot. Hopefully they will get catch a piece of news. Now that, I think Twitter and other news sources or media companies are doing that. So how do you separate signal from noise? I think that's a pretty interesting area, because journalists still are hard pressed. The publication cycles are shorter. So identification to publication is shorter. So they want to find higher signal than noise. So they want less false positives. That's, I think, one area. Jigsaw is a good company that I think also works with Google AI and Twitter on just identifying toxicity, which toxicity is slightly different than fake news. And it is, I think, a bigger challenge for daily usage. Fake news becomes a bigger challenge in big world events like elections and stuff like that. But toxicity is a daily problem. It's something that you need to solve on a daily basis. If you want to push something and people start responding negatively to you, then you don't feel like using the platform. So there is a huge incentive for platforms to at least downrank toxicity. So there's a lot of things. Toxicity is a much easier problem to solve than fake news.
Anybody else wants to chime in on some of the areas where any startups could explore or are exploring?
What I would say is that it's an open problem, right? And so figure out, like, let's say you can have a startup that focuses just on political news, just on terrorism news, just on natural disasters news, right? I mean, human beings react different to different ways. Like you can say, yeah, Sunnyvale Bay Area was extreme hot weather, 100 people died, but okay, it won't go viral, as opposed to saying something political that everybody has a plane ticket to go back to Mexico. They are different things, right? So as a startup, what you can do is you can say, I'm going to focus on political news. I'm going to focus on, like, say, toxicity, subjectivity. I'm going to focus on this thing. That's a much more easier way. You can have a startup just where you are, it's B2B model, where you know what, I'm not going to work with New York Times so that their articles are edited. Now it's up to New York Times whether they want to spread it or not, but they can use you. You can be more democratic, where I'm going to, for public, it's up to the end user like me, who have now done with all this fake news. I want an extension on my browser that tells me the likelihood, right? And so both have a business, everything has a business model, right? And that's what I would say, but narrow it down to make it easier for both companies and for the user as to who you are. If you come and say you have solving world hunger,
Thank you.
it won't happen.
Thank you, Prakhar, and I'd like to thank all the panelists for being here. Like I said, you can ask them questions. We are actually super out of time and super late for the next panel. I would request you catch these guys, post the panel, and they will answer your questions. I would just like to give you guys a little bit of gift if you wait for 1 second. This one is for us.